live. Cuomo talking about you with Eric Adams right now.
Pals around with Hasan Piker, who said America deserved 9/11. I did
cannot
a press conference with Wendy and Sal to Turkey.
I can't stress this enough. How like insincere and unserious of a campaign this has been. It almost feels like he hates me more than Zoran at this point.
Have 9/11 illness. 3,000 died on 9/11. You want to say America deserves
What the f is happening?
9/11? You insult all the families of all the people. You insult all the families of all the victims of 9/11, of all the victims of 9/11 illness. It is an insult to all New Yorkers. I did a press conference weeks ago and asked him.
I like that he's trying to mask the very obviously like racialized attacks, calling Zoran a jihadist and shit by being like, no, I was just saying he's gonna do 9/11 because he loves Hasan, who is another Muslim guy who loves 9/11, I think. This was his response to being asked about this, by the way. Yeah, Cuomo's talking about what he says in Mamdani's inexperience. Rosenberg suggests Mamdani would cheer another 9/11. Cuomo says deadpan, ha, then adds, that's another problem. Cuomo then continues talking about Mamdani's ability to handle a crisis. And then, in the most disingenuous way possible, he just keeps going, no, you don't understand. It's because he actually went on a podcast with Hasanabi Piker, one of the architects of 9/11. Both myself and Zoran Mamdani were 8 years old when 9/11 happened. I was in Turkey. Zoran was in New York. We were both 8. Being all buddy with Adams and shitting on the voters is definitely going to get him all the votes. Sure, buddy. It's just like such an obvious disingenuous line of attack. Asked about the exchange about 9/11 and Sid Rosenberg this morning, Cuomo says, I didn't make that comment, and then pivots to Hasan Piker and Mamdani. Like, you can go on the conservative radio talk show host Sid Rosenberg show to accuse the next mayor, potentially the first Muslim mayor of New York, as wanting 9/11 to happen, and that's not an indictment. And then when asked why you said that, you could turn around and be like, well, how about Hasan Piker, who was talking about the concept of blowback in 2019 that I'm cynically going to use over and over again. It's just so demented. How the asymmetry here is so demented. This is one of the other reasons why I always tell liberals and specifically leftists online to wake the fuck up and smell the goddamn roses. All of this stuff is disingenuous. You need to look at what a person actually represents without getting duped so easily by dumb who don't give a shit about you, your worldview, or are only cynically making it seem as though they're on your side. So many fucking Nazis online nowadays know how easily tricked leftists are, know how easily duped leftists are, know how easily duped liberals are, or let's just say were. So they use that as a tool of division. And Andrew Cuomo is demonstrating it through and through. I don't think I played that formative of a role in the New York mayoral primaries. I don't think I played that formative of a role. I'm sure like there was, it wasn't bad that we were early in our support for Zoran Mamdani in this community. But the very fact that Andrew Cuomo is singling me out as though I'm like some kingmaker is ridiculous. And the only reason why he's doing that is because he has an extremely online group of people in his campaign. Yeah, only look at the title. This is the guy whose show he went on. New York radio host, Liberal Jews Are Killing Us. This is Sid Rosenberg. This is the show that Andrew Cuomo went on. This person has a infinitely worse reputation right now and infinitely worse politics right now. What the fuck are we talking about? I use this as an example when I was talking about like Andrew Cuomo going on the Impulsive podcast. Like, are we really doing guilt by association when you are so desperate for a crumb of clout that you went on Logan Paul's podcast? Get the fuck out of here. Do you think this is actually changing anyone's mind on voting for Zoran? No, it's not. That's why it's so stupid, because the greatest way to just sever this is for Like it's such a stupid line of attack. It's not convincing anybody. No one is going, oh my God, I was really going to vote for fast and free buses, but it turns out Zoran went and did a Twitch stream with a person who in 2019 said America deserved 9/11 when talking about American foreign policy and the concept of blowback, a concept that there is academic consensus around. Well, this has really made me reconsider my stances. Like, that's not a real thing. In any case, this is not a significant problem for the Zoran campaign at all. It's not even a significant problem for someone like myself. It's just at most going to do reputational damage to me for like a week. And then people that hate me are going to use this as an opportunity to be like, oh, everybody hates you, law. And then what? Okay, a week later, the Trump administration is going to continue doing its fascism, and people are going to realize, oh, wait a minute, maybe we were wrong about this dude. This has been my entire career. People get whipped up in a frenzy over nonsensical whether it's because I bought a house, or whether it's because I leased a Porsche, or because they've imagined that I'm like abusing my dog by, because she sleeps behind me for extended periods of time. I can't believe dogs sleep in the same cot. People make up their minds, and then they realize maybe they were duped. It is what it is. The reality of the matter is, the reason why they hate that Zoran and I linked up is not because of my 2019 comments about 9/11. It's because I've been a proud, loud, fuck Israel advocate for the past 10 years, and it's been especially important for the past 2. That's it. It's the majority position, and these guys can't contend with it, so they have to angle different kinds of attacks without saying that it's because he's saying Israel. Back in the day, for the past 2 years, they kept repeating, oh, well, this guy's anti-Semitic. He says Israel. This guy's anti-Semitic. This guy's anti-Semitic. And it didn't work. And it stopped working. So now they have to find other shit to be like, well, we'll punish you for other reasons. So you shut the up. So others that are also on that same wavelength see what you go through, and they think twice before saying some shit like that. This is not me specifically speaking to the right. This is me specifically speaking to leftists and sometimes, and in many instances, liberals that fall mercy to the cynical framing adopted by right-wing reactionary figures. Right-wing reactionaries can dupe you so easily. Make up your own mind. Think about why this person, under different circumstances, would never bring up a point like this. Think about how silly it would look if the roles were reversed. If people were talking about how, like, oh, did you go on a podcast with Sid Rosenberg? Like, no one gives a shit, right? Here's Andrew Cuomo's response to his interview this morning with that Zohran Mamdani and others have condemned as Islamophobic. He doesn't say much, pivots criticism to Hasan Piker's comments, which Mamdani has condemned. This can't work. We have to move past this era of politics, man. Yeah, it's just like, it's so stupid, but unfortunately, sometimes people do get duped for it. It's not going to work in this race, but it is a far larger problem that must be addressed at some point. Because if liberals and leftists get tuned up with the outrage manufacturing machine and demand infallibility from their candidates or their advocates or their allies, and assume that everyone is morally pure, that you're not going to have disagreements sometimes with the people that you are aligned with. If you cannot comprehend that this is a normal human component, is a normal part of solidarity, is a normal part of how you build a mass movement, people of all different backgrounds, people of all different worldviews and experiences, you are not going to win anything, and you are constantly going to be wondering, why are there no other big leftist content creators out there? Why are there no perfect advocates out there? I don't understand. There is no such thing as a perfect advocate. That doesn't exist. There are people who just haven't had the same level of scrutiny that has been deployed to those at the top. That's it. Kathy Hochul is luckily attacking the Cuomo campaign, being like unrestricted Islam, doing unrestricted Islamophobia. He's buddies with the guy who said America deserved 9/11, also with the unindicted co-conspirator of the World Trade Center bombing. Again, I love that the response to Islamophobia is just more Islamophobia. Like the response to the bigotry represented by Andrew Cuomo is just bigoted people turning around and being more bigoted. Oh, excuse me. I'll have you know it's actually perfectly valid to say he wants to do global jihad and he loves 9/11. After all, he's with a prominent progressive Twitch streamer here who's talking about the concept of blowback in 2019. And he also loves 9/11. Here's another Muslim guy that I also am suspecting of loving 9/11. It's ridiculous. And for the record, before people say, this is not racism, because I brought this up. I talked about how Islamophobia is a different version of racism because it's racialized. And people's immediate response, like we're all the way back in like 2016 or something, where people are like, excuse me, Islamophobia means a fear of Islam. I don't fear Islam. I just want to kill them. And actually, it's perfectly valid to fear Islam. Also, how can you say this is racism? Because obviously, it's not racism at all. It's just a religion. And it's like, okay, it is racialized. That's precisely the reason why the first victim after 9/11 of an Islamophobic hate crime was not a Muslim man, but a man wearing a turban. He was Sikh. So how can you tell me it's not racialized? What do you mean? Every single person running for mayor and the current mayor have now talked about you on the campaign trail. I know. Do you think this will help his numbers or not? No, it won't. It's still annoying, though. It's still incredibly annoying. And also, most likely, it's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. It's dangerous for the Muslims living in New York. It's dangerous for Muslims living all around the Western world. That's how it works. It's the same principle behind racism against black people. It's not directed just at that one singular black person. It's directed at all black people. That's the whole point of bigotry. That's the whole point of racism. You are dehumanizing by elevating the stereotypes of certain people. Andrew Cuomo, this is a Politico article that also mentions me as well, but Cuomo suggests Mamdani would cheer a future terror attack. This is, I think, such a spectacular, overwhelmingly racist line of attack. You can figure out exactly what the equivalent would look like if they were talking about a black person, okay, and the white supremacist stereotypes in regards to a black person, or if they were talking about a Jewish person and the anti-Semitic stereotypes that surround Jewish people, even including 9/11, ironically enough, because there are plenty of people who think Israel and Jews were responsible for 9/11. And if Zohran Mamdani was a Jewish candidate and Andrew Cuomo, an Italian man, went on a right-wing broadcaster's show and turned around and said, like, well, you know, can you imagine a Jew being in charge of New York when 9/11 was happening? I mean, he would just cheer it on. He would do it again. He would tell all of his friends to leave the towers before the planes fell, like before the planes hit it. Like, that would be a career ender, right? That would be a career ender. And the anti-Semitic conspiracy of like the Jewish connection on 9/11 is a lesser known one as opposed to the direct Islamophobic conspiracies, which is why I don't feel as scared to even bring it up, as opposed to like something about black people or something more nefarious about Jewish people that is broadly known, like a more nefarious stereotype. And every person of marginalized background in this community and across the board knows exactly what this is, what I'm about to explain. Sometimes dealing with bigotry of this sort, if you're a woman, if you're trans, if you're black, if you're brown, is doubly because not only do you have to make the mental calculation of whether or not you have the time or the energy to expend to address the racism, you also have to literally think, well, what if the rest of the audience that's listening to what this asshole has to say agrees with him? That is one of the most nefarious aspects of having to consistently combat with bigotry of every sort. It's really fucked up. And it's one that women have experienced in terms of dealing with misogyny. It's one that black people have experienced in terms of dealing with white supremacy. It's one that brown people have experienced in terms of dealing with bigotry. And it's one that trans people experience as well. This is a part of understanding intersectionality. This is unfortunately how it works. And cynical actors such as Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams will lean into that. They will lean into broad majorities, finding Islamophobia to be totally permissible. And I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how to check that. I don't know. And that's precisely the reason why a lot of people just kind of let it slide. A lot of Muslims let it slide. A lot of black people let it slide. A lot of women let it slide. Because after a while, you're like, well, what am I supposed to do. I can't do anything. And in that process, people become, the victims of these sorts of bigotries become more aggressive. They have a hair trigger. It's from that exhaustion of constantly trying to prove your humanity to others who just don't want to see it, who don't want to hear it. And the knowledge that even people that you have perceived as your allies up until that very moment could turn on a dime and also see you in the exact same way that this white supremacist sees you is a terrifying prospect. So a lot of people just like refuse to even address it. Finally, a good take. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever had this take. Guy who's been called a terrorist by his former counterparts and virtually 95% of the sphere that I'm in the circles that I'm in for the better half of the last 2 years doesn't understand what it looks like when he only sees silence from all of the other contemporaries and counterparts. He doesn't understand it at all. Always woe is me, stop. This is unironically exactly what I was talking about. Because every single person that is marginalized in some fashion in this chat knows exactly what this dude is doing right now. Where you address it, and what happens? You address it, and people go, ugh, God, stop being a complainer. Can't even have a brief moment. This is partially the reason why there are places that are ordained as safe spaces. This is not one of them, obviously, but this is it. This is why people are like, oh, why can't we just have a safe space for ourselves? And then people find that to be an act of violence as well. Yeah. Just pulling the race card. Muslim. Islamophobia is bad. Islamophobe. You're a terrorist. Mahdi Hasan says the levels of Islamophobia in this country are off the charts right now. When talking about Larry Elder's post saying Zoran is going to do 9/11, but a communist 9/11 on New York. And God Saad, number one dick rider, major Islamophobic mouthpiece says, you know what's worse than Islamophobia? The nearly 3,000 innocent people who died on 9/11 at the hands of an Islamic terrorist, or the 48,000 Islamic terror attacks in the nearly 70 countries since 9/11 alone. People are waking up. I talked about this yesterday, but it bears repeating now. I think there is a deliberate effort by Zionist advocacy organizations that have now come to the recognition that Israel's PR is in the gutter for good reasons, and therefore they can't really defend Israel. So the next best thing that they could potentially do is shit on Muslims and try to turn Israel-Palestine into a Jews versus Muslims, or even better yet, Western civilization versus Muslims style conflict. There are obvious initiatives of this sort. That's why Tommy Robinson, a famous white supremacist fascist from England, flew out to Israel recently and tries to maintain the attention of the right and the reactionary movement on all of Islam's flaws and failures and really beefing up Islamophobia, because they realize that even the right doesn't f with Israel any longer. And once Israel loses the right, they got nothing left. But yeah, I showed you the Zoran Mamdani statement, like the statement made about Zoran Mamdani. And here is Zoran's response to it.
Before you sat down here, on Sid Rosenberg's radio show, your opponent Andrew Cuomo said this, quote, God forbid another 9/11. Can you imagine Mamdani in the seat, end quote. Rosenberg responded by saying he'd be cheering. Andrew Cuomo said, quote, that's another problem. I want to get your reaction.
This is disgusting. This is Andrew Cuomo's final moments in public life, and he's choosing to spend them making racist attacks on the person who would be the first Muslim to lead this city. And frankly, it's not about me. It's about the fact that there are more than 1 million Muslims who live in New York City. And to have our faith be smeared and slandered.
For the record, this is part of the reason why he can't just like outright say, oh, Hasan sucks, it's not me, when slam with the 9/11 because there are very few victories there for him. Okay, that's the maximalist position, but he knows where that resentment is coming from. He knows that this is cynical framing, which is why I was a little upset initially with his disavowal of the globalize the intifada narratives. He made that calculation in the moment that it was not worthy of having to defend over and over again, and he just didn't want to have to be inundated with this line of attack. So he thought he could just simply say, oh, well, you know, the globalized intifada thing, I don't say it, you know, I disavow it, blah, blah, blah. It seems like a lot, I've done some learning. It seems like a lot of people, have a different approach to what it is, right? But it didn't do anything. It didn't stop. And just like his disavowal or condemnation of me, if he were to do that, would not stop the Islamophobic line of attacks. You have to, at a certain point, address the exact root cause of why this cynical approach is happening. And he's doing that right now. He's doing that right at this very moment where he says it is the dying last gasp of a desperate candidate that is endorsing full-throated Islamophobic attacks against his Muslim opponent. And the very fact that Democrats are not all incredibly angry at Andrew Cuomo for, one, refusing to drop out of the race, and two, allowing him to basically exist within the Democrat infrastructure while doing these sorts of bigoted lines of attack, not just against Muslims either, but against all different marginalized backgrounds, as we saw in last night's AI attack ad that he crafted, that they quickly posted and deleted. The very fact that a person who is claiming to be a true Democrat, an institutional Democrat on this race, is hitting maximalist, Islamophobic, and racist attacks against the actual Democrat on the ticket is insane. Where are all the vote blue no matter who liberals who claim that Bernie Sanders did not do enough? Even though Bernie Sanders not only endorsed Hillary Clinton, but actually went all around the country at the behest of Hillary Clinton and did the same for Joe Biden as well.
By someone who at one point was considered a leader in the Democratic Party, showcases the fact that bigotry and racism is not exclusively a Republican problem. It is also a problem within our own party. And it is time that we turn the page on Andrew Cuomo and those that would tolerate this kind of rhetoric from him as well.
Yeah, I can hear the passion and emotion in your voice. It's personal for you.
It is. I mean, it just... To describe myself and describe Muslims in this manner, it begs the question of why this kind of rhetoric is acceptable when we're speaking about Muslim New Yorkers. Because all Muslim New Yorkers want is to feel a sense of equality and respect that every New Yorker deserves. And even that is being denied by the former governor.
Don't even try it. Don't even try to get on my lap right now. Be careful. There's a bear behind you. I know. It's terrifying. With a dire picture of Mamdani mayoralty, Cuomo plays to voters' fears. What a spectacular way to frame unrestrained and unrestricted racism. Andrew Cuomo is escalating his warnings that mayhem would follow a victory by Zohran Mamdani, even posting an AI-generated video that depicts his supporters as criminals. On Thursday, he urged Sid Rosenberg to imagine Mamdani in that seat if there's another September 11. Yeah, I could. He'd be cheering, he said. Cuomo left. That's another problem. It's just a little bit of playing into the fears of the voters. From the WAPO, but Hasan defense doesn't make sense. Cuomo spokesman Rich Azzopardi defended Cuomo's remarks, saying the governor was referring to Mamdani's refusal to denounce left-wing commentator Hasan Piker, who once said America deserved 9/11. Cuomo did not mention Piker in that part of his conversation with Rosenberg, and Mamdani has said Piker's comments on 9/11 were objectionable and reprehensible. Exactly. He thinks that's a good line of attack, except I am not a known entity. He thinks, oh, you guys are saying that me associating Zohran with cheering on 9/11 is racist. But actually, the reason why I was making that inference is because here's another progressive Muslim commentator that I also am associating with cheering on 9/11, a Twitch streamer. Yeah, and it's also additionally stupid because I'm willing to bet I'm probably, for amongst people who know who I am versus know who Cuomo is, okay, because not many people know who I am, but amongst people who know who I am in New York, I'm probably a more popular figure than Andrew Cuomo is. Like, it's so dumb. You just now said you're a Muslim. I'm so happy right now. Yes, obviously these people, when they make those associations, are really leaning into the Hasan Piker aspect of it. No one would actually call into question if Zohran went on Bill Maher's TV show. No one would be like, well, remember when Bill Maher literally said the 9/11 attackers were brave 2 weeks after 9/11 and then said, you know what's not brave? Lobbing Tomahawk missiles from thousands of miles away. That's not brave. You know who is brave? Flying into those towers. That's what Bill Maher said. Do you think this kind of association would be taking place with Zohran Mamdani and Bill Maher if Zohran Mamdani went on Bill Maher's show? No. I wonder why. And when asked to, when called into question his remarks about Zohran Mamdani, on the Sid Rosenberg show, this is what he retaliated with.
It was
Just like last night when he was asked about directly addressing his victims, specifically the one that was in the room, he turned around and said, "Oh, why don't you do BDS on Uganda?"
a radio show that I was on. I was not the co-host of the radio. I was, yeah.
Yeah, a guy who was trying to present himself as like the Democrat Party's alternative, even though he lost the primaries, can easily go on a right-wing show and be unrestrained and racist while simultaneously turning around and being like, but this progressive guy who works with the Democrats, okay, me, that association is unacceptable. It's ridiculous.
The host said whatever the host said. All right, that's the host. Those folks are the host.
Okay, the host said whatever the host said. The f do you mean? This entire campaign, you've been like, oh, well, what about what Hasan Piker said in 2019? I didn't bring up 9/11 to Zoran, and Zoran was like, yeah, it's awesome. Let's do another one in our conversation. In your situation, you did that this morning.
About that. I said about 9/11.
Yes, I'm the host in this equivalent thing. Exactly. Why is that host wrong and this one isn't? Well, one, because it's a bastardized quote about American foreign policy, and it was in 2019, dumbass. It wasn't yesterday. The equivalence of this being a line of attack would be if I went and talked to Zoran Mamdani and we extensively covered 9/11 and we said, oh, America deserved 9/11, and he agreed with me. That would be a major blow to Zoran's campaign.
That's another problem, referring to what I have said repeatedly, which is I have a problem with the fact that Zoran pals around with Hasan Piker, who said America deserved 9/11. I did a press conference with Wendy and Sal for Churchill. Sal is dying from 9/11 illness. 10,000.
Bro, this is such a nutty thing. The host said it in reply to Cuomo saying, could you imagine Zoran being mayor during a terror attack? So they are giving him an out by not mentioning that? I know. Yeah, how Politico is reporting. Politico, Piker, who later said his 9/11 comments were inappropriate. Exactly.
1,000 New Yorkers have 9/11 illness. 3,000 died.
Please stop trying to justify why not one but two Muslim dudes are being associated with like a promotion of 9/11. That's what he is doing. He is trying to associate and affiliate Zoran Mamdani in the eyes of the voters with 9/11 because Zoran is Muslim. He is trying to find a logical through line to do that within the confines of permissibility without directly saying Zoran would love a 9/11 to happen. Except the problem is he did literally say the quiet part out loud this morning. And now when people are calling into question why he did that, he's like, oh, well, he's friends with Hasan Piker who loves 9/11 and wants more of it to happen.
On 9/11, you want to say America deserved 9/11? You insult all the families of all the people. You insult all the families of all the victims of 9/11, of all the victims of 9/11 illness.
Yeah.
It is
And also, Zoran already condemned the comment itself. So, and then simultaneously said, we should still talk to people who we disagree with, regardless. And this is why the Democrats lose, which is correct. That's why I'm in this weird boat where like on the Grand Platinum stuff, there's like plenty of irredeemable shit in his background. But I do appreciate the fact that liberals are not playing around with this anymore. And I do think that liberals in New York are also not playing around with this shit at all when it comes to Zoran either, where they're like, yeah, I don't give a f. Like, what are you talking about? We need to have more of that. We need to have more of that mentality in the base. And we need to have more of that mentality for leftists as well.
insult to all New Yorkers.
You're talking about a guy who has not apologized for annihilating the elderly during COVID, a guy who has not apologized for 13 credible sexual assault allegations, including a state trooper, by the way, including a state trooper. That's why I say Andrew Cuomo cop rape. And he's over here being like, Zoran needs to apologize for 9/11, but he can't say it directly, even though he did actually laugh at it and also inferred that that's what he meant earlier this morning. So he has to turn around and be like, he needs to apologize more.
Press conference weeks ago and asked him to denounce that statement, and he refused. He refused. That is an insult to New Yorkers. And yes, I have a problem.
Why did you laugh when he said he would cheer it?
We're going to do this one at a time.
Yeah. My friend who's lived in Brooklyn her whole life was saying her dad hears them attack Zoran about you in 9/11, and it makes him like Zoran more because he doesn't want to get canceled for having friends who said dumb shit. I feel like that is more widespread than establishment Dems realize. Yes. I think the broader attitude that the right has demonstrated on their own candidates for actually reprehensible statements, not even like statements that could be defensible to a certain degree if understood within the context, if understood with what like the actual context is, but truly reprehensible statements, the right defends all the time. It should be possible to critique a candidate's ideas without demonizing the candidate himself. To insinuate that a mayoral candidate would celebrate a second 9/11 is beyond disgusting and disgraceful. We all have a responsibility to lower the temperature and restore a measure of civility to our public discourse. Welcome back, Richie Torres. Unimaginably Richie Torres W, it seems. Stranger things have happened. I agree, but I'm worried about not being able to acknowledge past mistakes. Reducing accountability structures would help. Dude, there is no accountability. No one gives a Wake up, okay? It's not real. It's just something that you cynically use towards your interlocutors and your opponents, or cynically use to stalk your least favorite Twitch streamers or some shit. What accountability? Andrew Cuomo's literally a 13-time sexual assaulter. What do you mean accountability? The president is literally most likely a pedophile that was affiliated with the most prolific sex trafficker of minors, and you're like, oh, accountability, oh, we gotta do what accountability? What are you talking about? It doesn't exist. If only one side demands this like idiotic version of accountability that doesn't even exist in the real world, and the other side is like, haha, accountability, what a bunch of idiots. We're gonna put forward drunk rapists and put them in a fucking head of the Department of Defense, and then change the word to Department of War, as a matter of fact, and we're going to laser innocent people on boats, and there is no accountability for any of that. What the do you think there is accountability for? It's a dumber version of, well, the Constitution says this is illegal, okay? Because at least there is an existing pre-existing court structure. You might actually have a Trump appointee or a Reagan appointee, a judge that literally goes, you know what, I am going to defend the law for once, and actually create a setback. There is no real mechanism of accountability. It doesn't exist. The voters did not choose to hold Donald Trump accountable for his actions. They elected him. Stop with this nonsense. It's literally just a way for you to get owned all the time. And the right knows this. The right knows this real well. That's why they cynically weaponize it against the left all the time. Thank God liberals broadly are just like, yeah, we're done with this. We're not doing this, because obviously the other side is not playing this game at all. So why should we play this game and harm ourselves? Moral infallibility is bullshit. Okay? Moral superiority is bullshit. Nobody cares. So in the absence of any sort of like real structure, the only thing you're doing is basically owning yourself and owning your allies in pursuit of this false moral purity that doesn't exist. Especially because when you are easily duped, easily tricked in this way, you can be tricked in even circumstances that doesn't require any sort of real accountability. Let's take a look at the accountability from the right. Here's what Steve Bannon had to say about Donald Trump running over and over again.
He's going to get a third term. So Trump 28. Trump is going to be president in 28. And people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is. But there's a plan.